Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is a panel of experts talking about COVID-19, its impact on the music industry, and how music industry folks are navigating this, and more importantly, what we can do about it. Thankfully, last night, the stimulus package passed. $900 billion, included as part of that $15 billion for venues like independent music venues and theaters, Save Our Stages Act. The reason I mentioned that is because if it was not for the advocacy of people like you, it would not have passed. This act was raised in July. It really didn't get any traction for a lot of reasons that you know, that despite repeated information, for example, people in Philadelphia, the administration, city council, that we're talking about $900 million in household income, $157 million in annual tax revenues. The arts and culture budget was cut to zero. Brought back to 1.2 million, but that never covered any of your industries. It just covered the Office of Arts and Culture and the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, which gives out grants. The idea that the creative arts economy generates jobs, revenues, and a bright future for all of us in this city is critical, but it has to result in action. Joining us today are experts who have a lot to say, but unfortunately only about 6 minutes to say it. My job is kind of to manage all of these experts. And listen, we have a lot of other people who could say things and add things, but because of the reality that, we're going to try to compress this into about an hour and 15 minutes, we are trying to hit on certain topics. So I will try to manage that, and I will try to make my comments very, very brief. What I will say is, because this is a sold-out event, it is being recorded, and we will play it later for people to see. We have a tremendous response from the media, which is also fantastic, and I appreciate them, because it's important to get the word out about what is happening. And for those who didn't know, we are working, many of the people who are panelists, speakers, and others, on trying to get a regional arts fund to really do more with the arts and what it means for our city. Having said that, let me just start with our first panel, which is going to talk about the impact on venues and what it means to people in the industry. And I will just say, if you extrapolate from there, what it means for our office workers, for our tourism, you could just go on and extrapolate in years into the future. We're fighting now to keep our venues. And so our panel will consist of 3 speakers: Kerri Park, who's the general manager of World Cafe Live and chair of P.I.V.O.T, Philadelphia Independent Venues Organizing Together. Shawn Agnew. Shawn is the founder of R5 Productions, owner of Union Transfer, Boot and Saddle, and Mark Denino, who is the owner of Chris's Jazz Café, internationally renowned venue. And so with the 3 of them, let me thank you for joining us and start with Kerri Park.
Thank you so much, Councilman O, for taking the time out to prioritize this issue and for assembling all these speakers here today to give their firsthand accounts about the devastating impact that the pandemic has had on our industry here in Philadelphia. Thanks also to Tom and the staff for all their hard work on the logistics to organize today's panel. I'm very humbled to be here today with this group, and it's so refreshing to see some friendly and wildly talented individuals joining today's conversation. We are all very much in appreciation of everyone who's here to listen to our stories this afternoon. My name is Kerri Park, and I'm a lifelong PA resident, and I've lived and worked in Philadelphia since 2004. Currently, I am the general manager of World Cafe Live, which has been operating out of West Philadelphia for 16 years. On March 13th of this year, we went from a vibrant and lively staff of 90 people to 10 overnight. We employ students and artists as well as skilled positions at all levels. We went from an average of 17 events a week to 0. We've been functioning at an average revenue loss of 92% for the last 9 months, while our overhead costs continue to loom over our heads. In addition to the mounting bills, we have also been experiencing a negative cash flow crisis as we return hundreds of thousands of dollars in refunds collectively as an industry to ticket buyers for canceled events. I'm here today because the story of my organization is not a singular story, because it is shared with every independent venue across the nation and here in Philadelphia. I work as the lead organizer for P.I.V.O.T, Philadelphia Independent Venues Organizing Together, which came together because of the pandemic, over 20 venues and counting, all operating independently in Philly. We were the first to close, and we will be the last to reopen. You're going to hear from 3 member independent venue owners throughout the course of this talk. And we're here today because small independent live performance, music and comedy venues are facing a mass extinction event, and we really do need help to survive. Our industry not only depends on the ability to safely gather, but our razor thin margins need 100% capacity to remain financially viable. The ability to open at a partial capacity is simply not economically feasible. Rents, utilities, payroll, taxes, insurance, artist payments are not on a sliding scale that match the capacity that we're permitted to host. These are fixed costs. Additionally, due to the national routing of most tours, our industry will not recover until the entire country is open at 100% capacity. As venue owners and operators, we recognize the necessity of being closed, but being shut down and shutdown regulations without financial support is not a viable way to sustain, and we are at risk of losing our independent venues. Independent members need assistance in order to survive until we can get to the place where reopening can be done safely. It is very significant that we are gathering today because it has just recently been made public, as the Councilman mentioned, that the federal legislation of the Save Our Stages Act was included in the pending agreement for new COVID stimulus relief. We are so grateful for this consideration because our independent venues are closing or considering closing as each week passes. I want to thank Senator Bob Casey and Representative Evans and Representative Boyle for supporting this initiative and helping to drive the point home of how crucial this funding is for our futures right here in Philly as well as nationwide. We have not seen the full text of the bill yet, but we are cautiously optimistic that this package will pass and be signed, creating an immediate and necessary lifeline. NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, will be working to make sure that the funds set aside for our industry are distributed as Congress intended, with as much accuracy and expediency as possible. This federal support is critical, but the road back to full operations is still going to be a very hard climb. Music and live performance is not what we do, it's who we are, and positively impacting artists and guests alike is what we are all waiting for on the other side of that climb. It's very much tied up in the identity of us as individuals, as well as our small businesses. We are part of the fabric that make Philadelphia a vibrant place to live and work and visit. We are also serious economic drivers, and if we lose live performance spaces, we run the risk of collapsing the entire creative economy.
David O is the...
As devastating as this pandemic has been, it is presenting us with a very rare opportunity. We have the choice now to position ourselves at the center of recovery in Philadelphia. Creative economies do not get created overnight, and we can deliberately decide to invest and expand what already exists that has taken years to build. Once we get beyond the daily struggle for survival, we can focus our newly bonded collective efforts on a more equitable landscape throughout the industry, and additionally focus on truly getting Philly the attention it deserves as a nationally recognized music city. There's a moment here to really concentrate on what kind of city we want to be coming out of this crisis, and I have no doubt that prioritizing arts and culture and the creative economy in our funding as a city absolutely pay off for generations. Thank you for the time.
All right, thank you very much, Kerri. I'll just ask everyone again, because I am hearing static. If you are not a speaker, please mute your microphone. We have a lot of people on this call, and we have some tremendous speakers. We have tremendous people in the audience. I'm looking at you right now, leaders all. But you know, we have to kind of give time to the people who are on our schedule. Again, I'm just going to emphasize that while the bill passed and there's no expectation it won't be signed into law, it doesn't solve the problem. It is a step and a hopeful promise that things will be done, but you have to put pressure on your local government to do things now, to get things done now, and your state government, and the money will make its way, hopefully, to Philadelphia, to the state of Pennsylvania. But, you know, for some people, they think this is going to solve things. It takes time like anything else, and it has to be distributed. Our next speaker is Shawn Agnew. I introduced him as the owner of Union Transfer, Boot and Saddle, and R5 Productions. Shawn, would you share your opinions and experiences with us?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Shawn Agnew, and I'll just give a quick overview of what the last few weeks and months have looked like for us. I'm currently a partner of Union Transfer. It's a business that's exclusively a live music venue at the old Spaghetti Warehouse building on Spring Garden Street. Since we opened up 9 years ago, we've welcomed over 1 million Philadelphians through our doors. Up until a few weeks ago, I was also the partner of another venue, Boot and Saddle. It was a 200 capacity club on South Broad Street, a former country western bar, which was shuttered for 18 years before we rehabbed the building back in 2013. 6 weeks ago, we were forced to shutter and close Boot and Saddle for good due to the pandemic. In the last 7 years that Boot and Saddle has been open, it served as the first stage in Philadelphia that many national and international artists first played on. A handful of those artists went on to eventually headline large arenas in town, like Sam Smith at the Wachovia Center. But more importantly, it served as an open and welcoming stage for the hundreds of local bands who call Philadelphia their home. There are dozens and dozens of artists who have begun their career on the small stage at Boot and Saddle on their way to becoming full-on big headlining artists touring across the country. After each passing month, there seems to be fewer and fewer places for Philadelphia musicians to play. Since March, we've had to cancel over 250 concerts. Our business is exclusively concerts. These shows cannot be delivered to your home. We cannot sell a takeout concert. We cannot safely open with limited capacity. We can't do outdoor dining or seating or anything like that. Over the past 8 months, aside from the revenue from a few t-shirt sales here and there, we've had $0 in revenue. We're currently operating at a literal 100% loss of income. Making matters worse, while bringing in $0, we have also had to refund our customers for all the canceled shows. As of last week, for us, that was over $350,000. It's almost as if someone took a vacuum cleaner to our bank account while bringing in $0. It's pretty tough. While most businesses were in their holiday rush last week, I spent that time emailing over 4,000 of our customers, more or less begging them to take vouchers or credits to use at our venue at a later date versus having to send them a refund. I never would imagine that I'd be currently in this position. I feel like myself and my partners, we operated our business the right way. We were responsible. We did save for that so-called rainy day. But when it became clear that the rainy day would likely be a rainy year, I don't think many businesses could have survived that. Between both of our venues, we had employed 130 Philadelphians. We have strived to do the right thing. We kept our full-time employees on until June. We continue to pay their healthcare costs in full, but time is running out. Even after the closing of Boot and Saddle and the potential to sell its assets to ensure that Union Transfer could make it well into 2021, we are still on incredibly shaky ground. As COVID cases continue to climb and touring plans for artists get pushed further and further down the line all the way into 2022, it's going to be near impossible to survive without some form of assistance. But with the hopeful good news of the SOS Act, for the first time since last spring, I feel that we can finally begin to see the finish line. We just need a little bit of help to get there. Myself, my partners, and in general, people who own and operate these music venues are artistic entrepreneurs. We pride ourselves on being self-sufficient, never lining up for government or public assistance. It's going to take years to recover from all of this. And all that we ask for is the chance to just be able to reopen and start making up all that ground that we lost this year. And one quick final thought about music venues. You know, they more or less function as performing arts centers for the young people in the city. I think everyone today would agree that the city and all of its residents greatly benefit from having a lively arts and culture scene here in the city. But music venues are especially important for Philadelphians who are not over the age of 21. So much of the city's nightlife is dedicated to 21 and up events, bar culture, or events for general older people. There are not many places to go where people from the age of 16 to 20 can congregate. With more and more restrictions being placed on throughout the city as to where people can go and hang out, this city's music venues serve a critical role, providing a positive and safe space for young people to enjoy themselves. And with that said, I'd like to thank Councilperson O and all of his staff, and Kerri, and everyone involved with today's meeting for affording me the opportunity to tell our story.
Thank you very much, Shawn. Our next speaker also owns a venue very well known in Philadelphia. And as I said, internationally known, it's Chris's Jazz Café. Our next speaker is Mark Denino.
Thank you, Councilman O. Thank you for having me. I'm Mark Denino. I own Chris's Jazz Café. Chris's Jazz Café is the oldest continuing operating jazz club in the history of Philadelphia. And this January, we'll be celebrating 31 years in Center City. You know, we did 500 live shows a year in 2019. And this year, that number was cut down to about 110. If we talk about the numbers, the economy behind the jazz club, and this is important because this is what we're looking for money. In 2019, Chris's did $2 million in revenues. In 2020, we've only been able to be open for 19 weeks out of the year, which cuts our revenues down to about $300,000. So we went from $38,000 a week in revenues, and we dropped down to $5,700 a week in revenue. In 2020, we brought in $365,000 at our door, the ticket sales. And in 2020, we dropped that number to $140,000. 2019, we made a profit, and we did put money away, you know, as any good business would, but we didn't put pandemic money away. And this year, we actually have lost $190,000. Now, for those of you who don't know Chris's, I'm only 110 seats. So I'm a smaller club than the World Cafe or the Boot and Saddle. So when we talk about a club of my size losing that type of money, you know, it's very detrimental. Our total operating loss for 2020 is expected to be, we have a few weeks left, $270,000 is what we lost this year. And, you know, knowing that the stimulus package is coming, it is a lifeline to us, but it's not like throwing a switch when we get that money. Live music venues don't operate that way, like a restaurant would, where you just say, okay, now we're open and everyone comes in. With the way you book music, it has to be booked in some cases months ahead of time. And we have to wait for the artists to start going on tour again. We're not going to be able to get national and international artists to come to Philadelphia and play if there is only one venue left for them to play. They have to do a tour. And it enriches, obviously, the lives of the Philadelphia people. But it's not just the cultural aspects, which, you know, obviously are very important. I'd like to talk a little bit about the tax revenues that come in from the arts. And just for us alone, Chris's Jazz Café, last year we collected for the state $40,000 in revenues for sales tax. Our liquor tax was $70,000 collected. Our amusement tax, which is the city of Philadelphia's tax, was $20,000 collected on our ticket sales. And our payroll taxes were $140,000 collected. So we're looking at $270,000 worth of taxes that were collected just from my little club that went back to Philadelphia and to Pennsylvania. And as Kerri had said earlier, with the people that are involved in P.I.V.O.T. So she has 10 people involved in P.I.V.O.T. And we know there's a lot more live music venues in the city. We can extrapolate that number to just for, 20 clubs to be $5.4 million in lost revenues from the taxes collected from these clubs. So I understand that we needed to balance the budget with some of the money that was going to the small businesses, but I think it would be wiser to give the money to the small businesses and collect the taxes on the back end. And I'm just talking about the taxes that I collected. We paid out last year almost $400,000 to musicians who pay taxes on that money. And also all of the vendors that we work with that we are not buying from anymore that would also pay taxes. So, it is a trickle up effect. If this is the amount of tax money that the city and state is missing out on because of our venues being closed, think about the much larger venues like the Kimmel Center or the Walnut Street Theater and the amount of dollars that the state and city are missing out by having those places closed as well. So I think that's one of the important things that we need to take a look at in terms of recovery for the smaller venues, that it would behoove the government to help us out financially, because they're not only investing in us, they're investing in the future of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania when it comes to these tax revenues. The last thing that I'd like to say is I was very excited this week to hear about Condé Nast picking Philadelphia as one of the 8 cities in the world that people should travel to. And I like to think that it is because of the nightlife that we have in Philadelphia with our live music venues and the theaters is one of the reasons that they chose us. And it's important to keep the small guys alive, because if the artists, they don't have anywhere to hone their craft, then there won't be anything to move up to the Kimmel Centers, and there won't be anything to move up to the larger stages. So that's my opinion on why we need this funding and why it's so important that we get it, so that we're here in the fall when we could possibly go back to something that resembles normal nights.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Shawn and Kerri. Just quickly, I was talking to our commerce director earlier today, telling him about a few years ago when I went to Korea to meet with SM Entertainment, K-pop, and what they have become. It's a globally competitive market, and a lot of it has to do with the digital platform. COVID-19 is reshaping things, and we have really got to ensure that those representing us as government, and particularly for me, the city of Philadelphia, understands what happens to our city if our creative arts economy, our venues, our musicians, our creative folks don't have a place to do what they do. It is a time in our global history where intellectual creativity is at the forefront of what is driving society. And so to speak for the musicians and some of our platforms, radio stations, our next panel will consist of Ellen Trainer, who is president of Local 77 Musicians Union, representing more than 750 members. Brent Porche, host at 93.3 WMMR, running the nation's longest running rock station, and Maureen Malloy, program director at 90.1 WRTI. Thank you very much, and I'll ask Ellen Trainer to start us off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman O. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today representing over 700 members of the Philadelphia Musicians Union Local 77. The members of Local 77 are a slice of the 80,000 plus musicians who are members of the American Federation of Musicians. We work in orchestras, backup bands, festivals, clubs, and theaters, both on Broadway and on tour. AFM members also make music for films, TV, commercials, and sound recordings. Throughout the pandemic, a lot of the focus of COVID relief has come in the form of PPP, employee retention tax credits, payroll tax credits, the airline and hotel industry, and restaurant workers. The arts and entertainment industry has been left by the wayside. With the unemployment extension and PUA set to run out, the musicians are left with nothing. We need a bridge to get to the other side of this pandemic, or things will never look the same again. Can you imagine a world without music? Just try to imagine your favorite movie or Broadway show without music. The famous scene in Rocky where he runs up the art museum steps and raises his arms in victory. Now, what would that scene look like without the music? It's hard to imagine, right? At the beginning of the pandemic, Ivanka Trump rolled out an initiative for unemployed Americans called Find Something New. Find something new, really? Being a musician is not what we do, it's who we are. Many of us have committed our lives at an early age to perfecting our musical abilities. We've studied and practiced countless hours every day, and for most musicians in Local 77 for decades. There is immense personal investment of time and money behind the scenes that goes unnoticed by the public. In June of 2020, the FDA advised vaccine developers that a COVID vaccine would require an at least 50% efficacy rate in order to win FDA approval. Thank God we lead the world in vaccines with a 95% success rate. In academia, a 90% will result in an A. This is totally unacceptable in music. If you want to hear your favorite band or your favorite orchestra and everyone in an ensemble 100%, you'd want a refund. Live music is one of the only careers that demands perfection. Our people cannot simply find something new. As we all know, the large-scale shutdown that was needed to slow the spread of COVID-19 has put the entire arts sector on hold, which has severely impacted artists' abilities to earn income. We were one of the first areas to shut down and will be the last to return due to public gathering restrictions. The additional financial burden associated with what is required to safely open a large venue to employees and the public are additional challenges to an already financially crippled industry. The Kimmel Center, the Academy of Music, the Wilma, the Miriam, the Susan Roberts Theater, the Walnut Street Theater, the Forest, the Met, the Mann, the Dell, wedding venues, the Convention Center, Penn's Landing, the steps of the Art Museum, the list goes on and on. All these venues are empty. All the people who work, perform, and service the audiences are affected. But not only are the artists affected, but the people who work at the venues and surrounding businesses are affected as well. The ticket takers, the ushers, the janitorial staff, the security workers have all been affected. Those who work at the parking lots, in the restaurants, and in public and private transportation have been affected. Closing down the arts has had a domino effect on the economy at large. So what has been done to help the arts organizations and artists thus far? Loans to arts organizations from the Paycheck Protection Program amounted to less than 1% of the financial package. And I can tell you from personal experience through working with the arts organizations throughout the pandemic, many times the gig worker did not benefit from the PPP funds that were received. In some cases, the arts organization received PPP loans but chose not to use those loans to assist the gig workers who lost employment and income through no fault of their own. In contrast to what is happening in the United States, or not happening, I should say, the Canadian government has been providing aid directed specifically at gig workers. In September, Canada extended their aid an additional 26 weeks at $400 a week. And unlike in the United States, a Canadian artist can earn $1,000 of income per week without affecting the funding. The European Union implemented a grant program of over $57 million. In Germany, the government has long invested in arts and culture and has committed billions of dollars to those organizations. The British government committed $2 billion to arts venues alone, calling them the beating heart of Britain. If venues are the beating heart of a nation, suffice it to say the workers who present and support the arts are the bloodline to the beating heart. Of the $2 trillion the US government relieved to organizations and workers across the country, arts-related organizations for the entire country received only a very small fraction of that amount. Our country has provided very little compared to the billions of dollars provided by Germany and Great Britain. The governments of Germany, Great Britain, and Canada realized the importance of maintaining arts and culture for society. What is it that the arts do? They create social and economic opportunities. Attending a festival, visiting a museum, going to a theater, seeing a concert. A national study concluded that every time an attendee buys a ticket, he or she will spend an average of $31.47 beyond the cost of the ticket. And I would imagine that figure is significantly higher for the Philadelphia region. Total arts-related spending nationally in 2015 was $103 billion. The arts and cultural value added, which is a measure of GDP across the entire United States, ranked second, just below retail sales, but above construction, which ranked third. In other words, arts and culture fuels our economy in a vital way, yet it is not getting the support that is required for our economic recovery. 42 million visitors came to Greater Philadelphia in 2016 and spent a record $6.7 billion. 11% was spent in the recreation sector, which includes spending on arts and culture in the region. The entertainment sector will play a fundamental role in re-engaging society and jumpstarting the economy. The arts needs help now in order to survive. The artists need help now. The most optimistic projected return to live performance is the spring of 2021, but many organizations anticipate a longer time period that could reach even into 2022. With unemployment benefits running out for some and others not having qualified in the first place, we ask for your help in supporting Aid for the Artist. Supporting the arts, culture, and entertainment sector will continue to benefit the city and state in a tremendous way once this pandemic is over. Nonprofit arts alone is a $166 billion a year industry that generates $27.5 billion in revenue for city, county, and state governments. Think about it. Philadelphia is a leader in the arts and culture world. People come into the city from far and wide. They come to see the Philadelphia Orchestra, the Philly Pops, the Pennsylvania Ballet, Opera Company of Philadelphia. They fall in love with the shops, the restaurants, the arts, and some even decide to move into the city. Then they go from being tourists to taxpayers and consumers. Losing the arts in Philadelphia would be devastating to the city on so many levels. If artists don't receive aid, they will be forced to abandon their chosen career. The talent pool will suffer, and you may never get the arts back. Please don't let this happen. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Councilman O.
Thank you very much. That's a lot. And following Ellen Trainer, we have two well-known Philadelphians, Brent Porche and Maureen Malloy. I'll ask Brent to go next and then Maureen to follow him. Thank you.
All right, great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Councilman O and his entire staff for putting this together. And just kind of piggybacking what Ellen said here, it's been a tough year as far as concerts and events and stuff like that. As far as from a radio standpoint has been concerned, we have been a rock radio station in Philadelphia for 52 years. I've been a DJ at WMMR for the past 15 years. I do nights and weekends there, and it's gotten to a point, especially during the very thick of the pandemic, that the ad revenue has been down tremendously. I've done entire shows which last about 5 or 6 hours, and I've had maybe less than 5 minutes worth of commercials. That is the concerts coming to Philadelphia. That is the live events coming to these venues that are struggling so greatly through all of this. And we've had job losses, we've had furloughs, we've had pay cuts all the way from the CEO on down through all of this. And it's been very difficult. But one thing that has stayed constant is MMR and WMMR, the radio station, we're there for you. We have a common voice. We have a familiar voice. We have the music for you to tune into, and to maybe get away from all of your daily news that you hear every day as far as the pandemic is concerned and all of that kind of stuff. And one thing else that is for certain is that we continue to support local music in and around the Philadelphia area. We have Jackson's Local Shots Artists of the Month. Each month we feature a band live on the radio station. Every Wednesday we get to promote their music, and we play some of their music on the air. But for those that don't make it as a featured artist, we still support them very much on our website as well, WMMR.com. So for all the artists that are out there and you're looking to get your music out and about, you can go to our website, again, WMMR.com. We have a contact section there. Jackson, he's our local shots maven, as is Sarah, and all their information is up there. And of course, you can check out what we do as far as supporting local artists in and around the Philadelphia area. One thing that I can say to the artists out there viewing this right now is social media. You know, it's a great thing to do. Your Instagram live stories, the fleets and, you know, hashtags and stuff like that. Get that stuff out there, and that's the kind of stuff that we take as well and promote for you guys. You know, put videos out there, do everything you can for yourselves. But as far as revenue is concerned, I mean, I don't do sales and I try to stay away from all that kind of stuff, but I know that our sales department is suffering greatly. Most of our salespeople have been working from home and haven't been coming into work per the CDC guidelines. We even had some DJs that were doing their shows live from home. We've set up the studios where with partitions up, and we can't have live guests in the studio that are promoting events, or that could be promoting events at the local comedy clubs and at the local venues, and then so on and so forth, as Kerri and Ellen have been mentioning. And just know that we are here. We will continue to be here for you guys. And if there's anything that we can ever do for you, especially as musicians and live artists, we are here for you. We did do a couple live-in, drive-in shows over the course of the summer where we were in the parking lot in South Philadelphia, and people could enjoy from the comforts of their car. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it was at least something, because I'm used to going to concerts 4 or 5 nights a week on top of, you know, hosting events 3 or 4 nights a week, you know, at T-Mobile stores or wherever they may have me. And all of that has been funds lost, not just for the station, but for myself. You know, I'm happy to still have a job and be part of a radio station that's been doing what they've been doing for so long. But I have so many friends that are the ticket takers, that are the t-shirt sellers, that are working in the parking lots and all that kind of stuff, that have been out of jobs since March. And I feel for them greatly. And I try to do what I can, where I can, whether it's, you know, a mention on the air, or, you know, buying a t-shirt for a struggling club, which I've done as well, or anything of the sort. So we will continue to do that on a larger scale at the radio station. And as far as anything that we can do to help you guys, we will be here. Like I said, all of our contact information is up on our website, WMMR.com. But we're here, we're not going anywhere. And if there's anything you can do, please help. And again, thanks a lot to Councilman David O and his entire staff for putting this together, and all my colleagues that have joined us today.
A reminder, I do hear some static. I know we have some people who joined in. If your microphone is accidentally on, if you somehow accidentally, you know, kind of unmuted yourself, please mute yourself so that we can hear our speaker. Our next speaker is Maureen Malloy from WRTI.
Hi, Councilman. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Maureen Malloy. I'm the Jazz Music Director at WRTI, and a lot of what Brent said, same. We're so happy to be able to still bring you music every day. We're so happy to be able to champion classical and jazz artists on a daily basis. We have something a little bit different going on that we're trying to manage, to continue to do, to keep our artists on a national stage. A little over a year ago, we became the only jazz on NPR live sessions, which, if you want to check that out, go to WRTI.org and you can get it through our on-demand tab. So this was great for local artists. They would come in, they would do sessions in our performance studio. Also some touring artists would stop through. And this is, you know, people who generally aren't looking for jazz, now seeing all these jazz artists all over the country and all over the world. Obviously, we had to follow the rules. We had to shut down our performance studio when COVID first hit. But we had a little bit of a backlog, which was good. We were still able to put up, you know, artists of the week, video of the week, things like that. For a short time, things got a little bit better. We pandemic-proofed our performance studio. Tyler in production did a great job with that. We managed to get, I think, 2 or 3 people in, and then everything was shut down again. Luckily, Jim Michael Harrison, who's our executive producer of NPR Live Sessions, made some great partnerships, Mark Denino being one of them. Thank you, Mark. They had that great setup at Chris's where artists were able to play and it was safe and there were screens and they were able to do these live streams. We got permission to run some of those as part of our NPR Live Sessions. And right now there is more in the works for early 2021. We may be doing some things with a label out in LA, but really we're doing this for the artists. The Philadelphia jazz artists, you know, they're not so much overlooked throughout the country anymore, but Philly wasn't really considered the jazz city that it was until more recently. And we want to do everything in our power to keep these people getting the attention that we were getting. Lillian Yell, who lives in Roxborough, kind of falls in between genres and told us that after some of her videos there, she was getting spins at radio stations out in Colorado. So it means a lot to the artists just to be able to continue to do what they do on a larger scale for us to keep doing this. So another thing we have in the works just to keep our local and touring artists relevant is playlists that we're putting up on NPR live sessions. We have local celebrities, we have jazz artists, and we have our own staff members going through all of our videos and making a playlist out of them so that when someone does go to NPR live sessions, they can see all of this great stuff that we've done that they might not have caught before. Once again, to keep these artists on the map, because we are trying our best to continue to pivot to help the artists. As a public radio station, we try our best, but there's only so much that we can do except for give as much support as humanly possible. So as always, Councilman, thank you so much for supporting the artists around here. And thank you to all of you who are doing your best to keep your places open and try to get people back in those seats. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. As I said, because we have a packed program, we cannot take questions or things like that, but all of our speakers are available. If you have any problems, you can contact my office. We could try to make those connections. For things that people are doing, we have a lot in our audience who are actively engaged in trying to keep the music alive, being creative, thinking outside the box. There are other things that are going on. There is film production, television production happening, looking for musicians, looking for studios, that type of thing. I don't know everything that's going on, obviously, but I think collectively there's a lot of people who do. While this is going on, for musicians who are out there, with some of the typical platforms gone, there's digital. And because of that, our next speaker, one of our renowned entertainment lawyers, is going to talk about getting your material copyrighted before we go on to our next panels of studios and production. And that speaker is Bernie Resnick.
Hi, I'm Bernie Resnick. I'm an entertainment lawyer. I'm a musician that went to law school. If you see behind me in my home office, it's also my practice facility where I not only practice law, I also practice bass. Thank you, Councilman O, for having me. There are things that people can do in order to protect themselves, in order to try to find a way to make lemonade out of lemons. I will certainly get to that in a moment or two. But first, rather than look at me, let me show you all some slides, and I'll talk about things that have affected our law firm, as well as how those of you might be able to make some solutions in the future. All righty. So first of all, as so many of the prior panelists have said, live entertainment's an absolute disaster this year. We've gone from picture on the left to the picture on the right, which is the Phila Orchestra performing to an empty hall at the Kimmel Center, which is no fun for anyone. So how's that affected our law firm and our clients? So first of all, we've had to go fully online. That includes every client meeting we've had basically this year. My wife, Sally Madison, is the other lawyer at our firm. We taught the entertainment law class at Villanova Law School fully online. We've given panels to other lawyers and taught and participated in other discussions, all totally online this year. It's a new experience for some to teach as well as to learn that way. We're trying to make the best of it. Second, as Kerri and Ellen have already pointed out, dozens of our clients had to cancel their tours and their concert appearances in all genres of music. And this not only affects the actual performers on stage, but it affects everyone around them. And some of the prior panelists mentioned these other folks. I'm not going to read the list to you, but you can see that's just the 15 other types of employees that have been hurt as a result of the pandemic that I could come up with off the top of my head. It's everybody that you can imagine involved with the concerts. We and our clients were not able to go to any award shows or festivals and conventions auditions for our clients. And that includes many of these events that take place in Pennsylvania. The PHL Live this year had to be postponed. The Harrisburg Millennium Music Conference isn't happening, etc. The Grammy Awards are even going online. There was no Glastonbury, no South by Southwest. These are major events that bring lots of people into towns and into states that bring a lot of their discretionary income and their tax contributions with them. Courts and governmental offices have either closed temporarily or have gone online. And that makes it very difficult for a lawyer when you're unable to avail yourself of a court or a government office to do justice on behalf of your client. They're really necessary to get them back up and running because they do help us and our clients in many, many ways. And it's just been difficult all year long to work without them. Unfortunately, some of our clients and colleagues have become sick from COVID. I just got the news an hour ago that yet another client of mine is sick. And some of the panelists that you're hearing from and will hear from today have had close family members either become ill or pass away. Our hearts go out to them. We keep them in our thoughts and prayers, especially at this time of the year. This is not easy for anyone. And we always have to remember that we're not just in this business to make money, we're in business to create emotions and help people get through the touchstone moments in their lives, very difficult to do when hundreds of thousands of people are infected and are passing away. So as a result, our firm, we lawyers are working all the time. There's no more boundaries between nights, weekends, days, holidays. Every day is the same for the client need. And we're trying to help them navigate this new world where they've got to try to pivot to create other ways to either make good money out of what they already have or find new ways to monetize their catalogs and make money. So enough about what has happened. Let's talk about what we can do. Here's some predictions and some solutions just off the top of my head. First, Sally came up with a great one. She said the entertainment industry is going to skew into the haves and the have-nots. So what that means is that in order to survive and thrive in this business, you're going to have to adapt to working digitally, and that might mean taking a fresh look at your catalog of works, no matter whether it's music or theater or film or television, whatever it's going to be, figure out new ways to monetize what you already have and to make your content more valuable so you can actually pay the bills with that. Second, as David wanted me to talk about, owners of intellectual property are going to have to consider new ways to monetize their catalog, potentially selling or borrowing against the value of that catalog. And step one for doing that is going to be the fundamental thing one needs to do in order to establish your rights for as long as you live plus 70 years, and that's file copyrights. Copyrights last for the author's life plus 70 years. So it's really essential that you either go to the Copyright Office website, which is a terrific website, it's copyright.gov, to file those copyrights, or contact your accountant, your entertainment attorney, or those in the know who can help walk you through the process of protecting your work. This would also apply not just to creative content, which is a copyright, but also to the name or the logo of your business, which is a trademark or a service mark. Or if you have a scientific invention, a mechanical process, or a design, that could be protected by patents. And that's what we lawyers are here to help the clients develop, maintain, preserve, protect, and commercialize. Third prediction is that small independent businesses, in particular in the music and film and television industries and self-employed persons, we're going to need those people to have assistance, not just from good people like Councilman O, but from state and national government and representatives. And I believe personally government exists to help support the creators because that helps people keep their jobs. It generates tax revenue for all, and it encourages those who are creative to do the creations. You know, we have all the way back to the Constitution, the Patents and Copyrights Clause. So it's fundamental to our way of life in the United States of America that creators have the right to get a monopoly and protect their ownership in their works to encourage them to create. We need to make sure that that continues in this century and beyond the pandemic. Finally, we have to be patient. Even if all these wonderful vaccines that got to market so quickly are out there, and even if we get people to take them, it's still going to take quite a long time for all of these governments to help us recover and for everybody around the world to recover. So we need to be patient and work at this one step at a time. No one leaps to the top of Mount Everest. We all have to get there by putting one foot in front of the other until we get to the top of the mountain. If anybody has any questions or would like a copy of these slides, I'm happy to provide it. You can either contact me, my information is on the screen, or just reach out to Councilman O's office and they can forward this material to you. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions if anyone has them. And I know the time is short, lots of people need to speak, so I'll be quiet and let the others continue. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of myself, the Music Industry Task Force, and the professionals around musicians in this.
Thank you very much, Bernie. Our next panel will be speakers who are, representing studios and production. They'll talk about how they're still able to record artists in studio, make music, mix and master during the pandemic. And they are Tommy Joyner, the owner of Milk Boy Studios, Milk Boy Restaurant, Carvin Hagens, two-time Grammy Award-winning producer, and Craig White, the sound doctor, producer, sound engineer, formerly chief recording engineer of the legendary Philadelphia International Records. So with that, let me ask Tommy Joyner to start us off.
Thanks, Councilman. Everybody, my name's Tommy Joyner. I'm one of the owners of Milk Boy Recording Studio and also the bars Milk Boy on 11th and Chestnut, and also the Milk Boy on 4th and South. I started Milk Boy kind of by myself, and now I have partners, but a long time ago in '94, I was a kid out of college, and I'm not from Philadelphia. I moved to Philadelphia to be a part of something much bigger than myself, and it worked. I met a ton of people, and I met them by going out to open mic night and by going to clubs and seeing shows and encouraging and trying to get people to come do a record with me with my cassette 4-track recorder and my microphone, and it slowly became something real. I can't say I ever pictured that Milk Boy would be anything beyond that when I started, but over time it started to grow into becoming an actual real studio. And I met a ton of people in Philadelphia welcomed me with open arms. And I have been so grateful all these years later that I made this move to come to Philadelphia from my home state of South Carolina. And the studio, when the pandemic hit, we were unsure about what to do. Obviously, we started canceling shows at the bars. I mean, that was like the first clue that things were going sideways, because the cancellations started coming in February, maybe even in January, but January, February, definitely they were happening. We did our last show in kind of the beginning of March. And finally on the 16th, when we got word that we were gonna shut bars down in the city, we were like, okay, this is not just about the bar, it's also about the studio. It's also about the creative work that we do at the recording studio. I had projects underway with several bands, several artists that just got put on the shelf for weeks. We were closed until about May. But after the city began well, first my engineers and myself, we started kind of trickling into the studio and starting to work on our own projects and getting going again and keeping that creative, the creative juices don't stop, just because the world stops, there's still creativity happening. And so many people relied on us to do that and to be a part of that. Our advertising work, we do music for film and television for products, and advertising agencies will hire us to create music for their ads. That all began to look very different. Suddenly every ad looked like a Zoom meeting like this one, and all the audio was very natural audio, very little music going on, and so that really backed off. But album projects kind of picked up in a way that was sustainable. We sent all of our employees at the bars onto unemployment rolls. We did the same at the studio, but we brought them back much. We were able to bring them back much sooner. Now, of course, at the bars, with no more indoor dining, when that got shuttered in Philadelphia again, that got shut down again. But we've been very lucky that we have the studio being vibrant. In fact, at times it was busy. It was busy here. The creative class in Philadelphia is hardworking and very prolific, and there's really no holding them back. What does it mean for where these projects go? Some of them have been label projects for sure. You know, when we're busy, it's because a record label has hired us for several weeks on end. But in between that, it's locals, you know, that has always been our bread and butter, have been figuring out how to get their music online, have been figuring out how to get their music into a format that it's a show where somebody can actually, you know, maybe contribute. Even though it may not be live, it's a, you know, they're having a show on Friday and you can tune into their show on Friday. And they sort of pass the digital hat, and that has supported artists and musicians to some degree. It's scary, you know, everybody has to give, everybody has to be aware of how hard artists work and how little they are compensated for all their effort. It's very easy to take artists for granted, to say, well, at least you're happy doing what you do, so therefore you know, you don't need as much money as the rest of us do. We still have rent, we still have kids, we still have pets to feed. I mean, you know, there's still a whole host of things that artists have as many needs as anybody, and are often overlooked. I'm optimistic that the new act has passed, at least, or, you know, been introduced into committees in Congress, and that if that can get passed. I'm very optimistic about the Save Our Stages component of it. I'm not sure what that will mean to us yet. The rollout of funds to the public was very uneven and strange, and we got PPP loans, but there was a time limit at which we could spend them, and there's no way we could be open before we had to basically return the money. It was, you know, it was just this very uneven implementation of a lot of goodwill there. I will say that. I mean, the intention was right, but you know, the actual rollout was very uneven and sometimes hard to utilize. And we're hopeful that that gets figured out in a way that is helpful to all of us artistic people who make their livings and make other people's lives great by being part of this artistic economy. Councilman Noah, you've always been a great supporter of the arts. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing what you do. Sometimes it feels like nobody's listening, and you always do. So thank you, Councilman Noah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Now, I got some bad news, just got it. Carvin is tied up, can't make it. So I'm going to come back to you with a question, which won't take much because we still have to go through, of course, international DJ Casper, who's been listening the entire time. Craig White is next. And so the question I'm come back to both of you is, when you're done speaking, Craig White, the question is, what can artists do now in terms of recording and some like innovative idea? What can they do? Do you have any suggestions on what they can do to productively use your time? Now, I'm going to give Tommy Joyner a minute to think about that while Craig White gives us his 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, and I'll echo Tommy. We so appreciate you and everything that you've done to support the creative community. You and I have done several things together over the years, and I can't thank you enough, and I'm sure everyone in the city in the creative community is very appreciative of all your efforts and things that you've done. To address your question, we're doing a lot of innovative things in the recording industry, and luckily I've had the great opportunity to be able to work from home for several years. As you can see behind me, I have a very compact but very effective setup where I can work and do some aspects of what I do. But unfortunately, people like Tommy, who have larger commercial rooms, and other friends of mine who operate similar situations, they're basically dead in the water for a lot of this pandemic. And so what happens is it takes the ability from us to be able to record larger things that we need to do. Some of the pre-production and some of the actual recording of albums we can't do. Recently, some studios have begun to reopen, and we're doing the sanitation protocols and all of that, but it's still not quite the same. And as anybody who's a creative person knows, there's an attitude and a vibe and a feeling that happens when you're recording and when you're creating, and you can do it and get around it, and we do it, but it is not the same. So the sooner we can get everybody back online, commercial studios as well as independents, the better. Now, to answer the question, there's a lot of new technology out that we can use. There's couple of audio platforms that we use. Audio Movers is one, Session Wire is another. They basically give you a virtual studio environment where I can hear what my client is doing, they can hear what I'm doing. We do the visual portion over Zoom, so we got both things going at the same time. And after a few minutes, you almost kind of forget that you're not in the same room with the person you're working with, but it is not the same. My business has probably fallen as a result of not being able to do portions of what I do on a regular basis. I probably lost about a third of my income. So the stimulus package initially helped. The new one, I hope it comes soon, because as I'm still working, things are fine. The bottom hasn't totally fallen out for me, thank God, but it's definitely had an impact. So what we're doing is a lot of virtual sessions. I do a lot of my post-production and mixing work here. So that, luckily, because people can email me files and send me files through various, Dropbox, not Instagram, Dropbox, and WeTransfer, things like that, I can still get content and still do a portion of what I need to do. But it's tricky. And I think that until we are able to get fully functional and get the full 360 of all of what our recording industry does, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I think that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Luckily, the technology is allowing us to do some things. We need to get fully operational, though. And I think that until we do, musicians and other guys that I work with are going to be really impacted because they can't finish albums. Some folks have passed away. I'm mixing an album now where, unfortunately, I got word last week that a gentleman that is doing a powerhouse vocal on that album is no longer with us. So he will not get to hear the finished work that he was such a big part of. So, I mean, and there's maybe 10, 20 stories like that I could tell you of people that I know and that I'm personally aware of. So it's we've all taken a hit. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but it is very, very difficult to do everything that we need to do. So all we can do is hope and pray and keep pushing, because that's what we do.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'm going to go back to Tommy Joyner. If you could perhaps give us your thoughts on some new and innovative things people could do, the artists themselves during this difficult time.
Well, the number one thing is the tour replacement of doing a live stream video. And like I say, many of them aren't live. You can kind of record and mix and then present it in a live way and be right there with the chat. And it will be, David Letterman records his show at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and, airs it at 11. That's okay. It's okay. That's what I'm seeing, that very much so. And, like Brent Porche said, your socials are important. They're definitely a way to engage younger fans, but that may not be everything. There's also, don't forget to email people and let them know that you are going to be doing something live at whatever 9 p.m. tonight or tomorrow, and consider merchandise. Consider there's companies like Cafe Press that will make shirts for you on a one-off basis, so that you can put up a full slate of merchandise on your site and be like, I have a coffee cup and a cell phone case and 8 different T-shirt designs, and it will make them one-off for whoever orders them, and you can set the price on there where you want it, and kind of draw that income stream in, and make cool merch. It's all a responsibility. It's tough being an artist, and we know that. Especially if you're doing so much of this yourself, you're like, why am I I don't want to design T-shirts, I play guitar. But it's going to be fun, and you have to be willing to engage your fans in that way. And those are those two things are I think that artists don't take advantage of enough, that have really blown up during the pandemic. Just like these Zoom calls that didn't exist before. Now it's funny. We have done some advertising work, has begun to creep back in. And we see people on the West Coast more than I ever saw them before, when I had to rely on, we would sit around a table with a phone in the middle and we'd all talk at this phone. And we never see their face. And now we actually get to have FaceTime with people that wasn't available before. So there are some things out there that are, in ways, our lives may not be better now, but because of the innovations that have happened, our lives are going to be better after this is over.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Our next speaker is a DJ, the only DJ signed with Darkchild, Rodney Jerkins. His name is International DJ Casper. And so let me have him give us his 6 minutes of input. Thank you.
How's it going, everybody? How's everybody doing? Thank you for having me, David O. Just give you a little history. So I've started DJing at 5 years old. I was in clubs at 13. I started at 13, a club called Club Dances. I was it was a young adult nightclub back then. There was the only young adult nightclub back then. Everything else was 21 and up. And since then till March 15th, I've DJ'd probably every night, like probably multiple times a night, tours and everything. March 15th is when the pandemic affected me, and affected me pretty hard, and all my DJs. I'm in a DJ camp called Senate DJs, and most of the DJs I talk to, even the ones that try to go back to DJing a little bit, doing when things open up a little bit, most of them they got COVID. So I've been one of the DJs that been staying completely away from it, like completely away from anything in person. What keeps me afloat is I also produce music for TV and film and artists and things like that. Of course, I'm signed to Darkchild, so my royalty checks keep me afloat. But as far as DJ revenue, like, dropped drastically. I am also the CEO of I-Talk, which merges leadership, content, stage drama, and pop culture. We did an event at Kimball Center, Frank Sinatra Mansion, Ogilvy, and the last one was in February. And we are scheduled to take that tour, back on the road to London, a couple other places. I was actually scheduled to go back on my world tour also. Everything shut down during the pandemic. So it's good that they mentioned that it's a new relief fund coming, because a lot of DJs need that. Again, fortunately for me, I'm okay, but I talk to about 30 DJs a day and they're hurting bad. And a lot of them just got clear of COVID, and they still went back like to DJing because they have to, like they can't pay bills and things like that. So leading to what some DJs, from a DJ's perspective, what you can do, what I pivoted to is a thing called OBS and Twitch, where you can create, well, me and my friend Anthony Soho, we create virtual clubs. Like, we design clubs inside of Final Cut and Photoshop, and then you add that with OBS, and you can actually make. So we kind of design a lot of the clubs that we used to DJ at, we do it virtually. So we get, we get events that way now. But as far as being in person, I haven't been in person in a club since March 15th. Like, because I just don't want to know what COVID will do to me. You know what I mean? Like, some people say, I know people who died from it. I know people who had it and they okay. I just don't want to experience that. But for far as the DJ perspective, is hurting a lot of the DJs. And I'm in touch with all of them around the world. And we try to talk about doing virtual concerts where cars drive up and things like that, try to get sponsorships for that. A lot of those things fell through. But as far as, people that's, all my other creatives that's on this call, and people that are watching to figure out some things they can do if you're in this field, definitely try to get into the OBS system, Twitch, create content that way. Like, try to be creative in your gift and your talent. And like several people said before me, try to, make a way in this new age world that we live in. I don't have an idea when we're going to go back to normal. When I think about it, it's kind of hard to see it, like someone who's, I've been, let me see, I don't think I had any nights off. Like, I was DJing from Monday through Sunday to Monday. I was supplying a lot of other DJs, with gigs and work. Like, I would send other DJs out. I would be booked. I'm typically booked 3 or 4 times a day. So I send a lot of DJs out to other things I can't do. And again, fortunately for me, my royalty checks keep me afloat. But as far as DJing at clubs and venues, and I talk to the club owners and venue owners, from Vesper to Wrecking Royal to tons of different places, everyone is hurting. It's pretty bad.
Thank you for your input and for all that you do, DJ Casper. you know, our time is at an end. I will just say, kind of listening to everyone, what I'm getting from this and what I want to share is so much of, unfortunately, what is happening, as creative as you can be, is coming down to your advocacy. Basically, this is your government, or is it? Is it your government? It's supposed to be your government, and it's really critical that you get in touch with your government and tell them what they need to do for you. You know, listen, other people are doing that, and the squeaky wheel is definitely getting the oil. And for all that you do, and nobody is disputing the numbers, the jobs, the revenues, the taxes, and beyond that, what it does for the human beings, the human spirit, the human soul, if you will. And the future of our country and the future of our city is not in making hats, it's in making music and films and other intellectual and creative things. But if our government is still interested in funding things that make hats and not music and intellectual property, that's a big problem. This COVID might be a time where it's time to bring government up to speed. The other thing is that, you know, yeah, I was very disappointed we couldn't continue with PHL Live. There are other things like it. It's not, you know, listen, I'll get the money from the city. I have to go out and scrape up for it the best I can. But what's most important about it was our judges and our hosts, these people who testified today, the industry leaders and experts that would go through the videos, come up with 5 fantastic finalists among the many fantastic people that submitted. Very tough to be a judge, and then put their seal of, you know, like approval, which is a little thing that guides lay people like me when they say this is a finalist, this is a you know, it tells me, hey, you know, if one of these guys, Craig White or Tommy Joyner or Bernie or any of these guys who have been judges, Carvin Hagen, says, hey, you need to look at this, you need to watch. I do, because I respect them. I know who they are. There are fantastic musicians, but nobody knows who they are because nobody has said, hey, look at this person. And that's an ecosystem, or that's something that we need. And we have the people in touch with each other. If you're an artist or a musician, look at the people on this call, look at the people on the Zoom. They're more than happy to reach out to you, or for you to reach out to them. They'll help you. I've seen them. They try, they bend over backwards to try to help people. You know, if they could do it on the radio, if they could plug them in to another radio station, if they could get you played, you know, it's a great time in a bad time to collaborate and get things done. The final thing I'll say is this: consider the global market. You know, everything has gone digital. As Tommy said, listen, he's talking to people on the West Coast. I mean, you know, it's much easier now. It's the norm. You Zoom people, you talk digitally. I went to Korea years ago to meet with the CEO of SM Entertainment, K-pop. And at the time, K-pop was not taken very seriously. Tommy remembers, and we talked about it. And you know, I mean, he was serious. He said, like, listen, you know, this is, you know, he's a good predictor of the future. But look at what happened to that market. Look at the money they're bringing in. You know, I mean, things are changing. And at a time when people didn't think, you know, like I knew that R&B and gospel was huge in South Korea and China, when people never thought about that. It's huge. And then as far as rock goes, and I shouldn't say this, I know it's being recorded, but you know, there are like 3rd-class cities in China that have like 8 million people in it. And when they put on a rock band from the United States, it could be a college frat band. There's lines across, if people want to go see authentic American rock. And I'm just saying, like, you know, sometimes you're not appreciated where you are, and you need to venture out where people are dying to hear you, see you, get a taste of what you have to offer them. Don't forget the global market, because they don't expect you to fly over now. They just expect a video or a digital or something, to the extent that that city government should be helping you do this, marketing Philadelphia to the world. It's another thing that you could, advocate for. With that, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers and our advocates. And I'm hoping for the best, but make sure that you're in this fight to get the dollars, not rhetoric, not lip service, dollars into this industry. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Councilman. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Thank
Everyone
you.
be
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate you.
See you.
all
Happy
right.
New Year. Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, everyone.
New
Thank
Year.
you, Councilman.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good to see you. Good to see you all.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.